Hello and welcome back to another episode of the CrossFit Harrow podcast. Today is episode number 59 and we are joined by Theo. Hello Theo.
Hello.
How are you?
Yes, I'm very good. Very good.
Good.
Thank you.
Theo has been with us now it was probably around just after lockdown. Just
September.
Before, September.
The beginning of September was my first class.
And we was outside, yeah?
No, we were back inside.
Back inside.
We were back inside. I think lockdown finished around the beginning of August, but it took me a couple of weeks to kind of be convinced that this is the right place. This is the place to come to.
The first question I always ask everyone is, what brought you to CrossFit Harrow?
Right. Well, what brought me to CrossFit first was basically one of the influences was my line manager at work, who's a CrossFit judge.
Okay.
So a big advocate of that. Also, as well, to my previous gym, which was Virgin over in Mill Hill, I got a deal that I couldn't say no to in terms of one-to-one training, which involved functional training, which was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like this. And the results were quite interesting. And then to hear that, plus what my manager at work was saying about CrossFit, it just seemed to all just add up. I needed something new. Things had got a little bit stale.
In your own training and stuff?
Yeah. Just kind of like going through the motions and stuff like that. And when I did a bit of research, it all seemed to just fit in. And the working with the people as well too has been so good, especially during the lockdown times as well too, where you're doing so much stuff on your own. You're going out for walks on your own. You can't go to this. You can't meet people here. So to be able to come in and train with up to, I think at that stage it was up to 10 people was great. Yeah. And also as well to be actually properly coached.
Which a lot of people don't get or have never had before.
Yes, me included. Yeah, it was the first time, and I was wondering why I was getting pains in my knees doing deadlifts and stuff like that, and I realised very, very quickly why.
And how was that transition from going to, you've been training a long time. Mm-hmm. How was it? Well, I'll go back to that question. But how was the transition from going into the stuff that you knew, how you done for so long, to transition into something that was quite new?
Oh wow, yeah, very much fish out of water. I have to say, my first class, I was absolutely,
You can swear.
Yeah, I was absolutely crapping myself. I really was, because I saw everybody here, and I just thought like, oh my God, all these people are doing all this stuff, because weightlifting, in terms of like what I call classic weightlifting moves and things like that, I'd never done in my life before. And I just thought, what on earth am I doing here? And I figured, well, I've paid for the month, so I suppose I might as well just see out the month. And that's it. Put it down to experience and stuff like that. And I was like the like the boy being dropped off at reception class on his first day in primary school.
Because you said there about experience. Not many people would associate an older gentleman like yourself to be in the CrossFit environment. They would assume that maybe it's not for you, or shouldn't be done at that speed or intensity or whatever it might be that their views on. But actually, you've settled in very, very well.
Oh, love it.
And what would you give? What advice, let's say, or what would you say to fellow, people of similar age to be like, it can be done?
Oh yeah, most definitely, yeah. Like obviously, there is the intimidation sort of factor when you go there first and things like that, because it is so much different. And there is a generation gap as well too, between myself and quite a lot of others there. My only regret is that I wish this was around 30 years ago and stuff like that would have been absolutely magnificent.
And what did training look like for you 30 years ago?
Very much your classical sort of movement, like your bench press, your shoulder press, your typical kind of gym movements that you would get at your normal gym chain, which I've been doing for probably 25 years and things like that. Your lat pull down machines and stuff like that. But functional training, and very much like one exercise, one part. Yeah. Whereas here it's one exercise covering about 4 or 5 parts. And it's a whole load of stuff like condensed into one, but covering everything. It's quite incredible.
And obviously you said your line manager at work was or still is a massive advocate of CrossFit stuff. So that was a big influence for you to move over and try and give CrossFit a try.
Yeah, and as I say, the first class was definitely fish out of water. But I remember the second time I come here, which was probably the most difficult as well too, because you've been here once, you get the shock factor, and you're thinking like, right, that's it, I'm out of here, I'm not coming back here again, this is too much for me. But I dragged myself back in again, and I don't know who it was now, but I always remember, I think within the first couple of minutes, somebody else saying, oh, this is my third class here, and somebody else chipped in and said, this is only my second here, and then suddenly that to me broke the ice, big time.
And it just didn't feel like it was just you kind of eyes on you.
No. Suddenly I realised, actually, hang on a minute, there's other people that are in a similar sort of boat to me in terms of familiarity with this environment as well too. And the other thing as well too that was very, very good was the fact that like there are movements and motions that I just couldn't do right from the start. But suddenly coaches broke it down, and then suddenly I found things that I could do to start off everything, like the pull-ups and stuff like that,
and slowly becoming more competent and more comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't have to. It's not a case of I can't do a pull-up, so therefore you can't do it. So no, we break it down. We do ring rows and stuff like that. Suddenly I found, hang on a minute, I can do this, and that sort of builds up, and it gives you the confidence.
And with your training experience, you probably kind of acknowledge that more in the sense of like, I don't have to do, I'm not 18, I'm not 20, I can take things and learn progressively. Whilst a lot of people look on the outside and go, I have to do everything right now. I've got to learn right now. I've got to do it. Why am I not getting the best out of training? It's like, well, actually, let's scale back and find it.
And also as well too, it's probably like the way I am as well too. I get upset if I can't do everything perfectly. I get upset, and then I beat myself up, and etc. And that sort of thing. But I have, like, through my training over the years, there are areas I have strengths in, but it was just finding those areas. And the gymnastics side of CrossFit is something that very much is new, but it'll come in my own way. In my own way. Like, I'm not going to be going to the next Olympics or anything like that. Max Whitlock and what's the other guy? Lewis. Lewis Smith. Max, they've got nothing to worry about. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be
chasing their tail.
No, I'm not going to be on Team GB or Team Ireland or whatever country I go for.
What was like growing up in sports at school? What was that like for you? Were you
my saviour? My saviour, really. I'll go back to. Obviously, I was born in Dublin and raised in Dublin throughout the 70s and the 80s. Obviously, an interesting time for Ireland as well too, because we had the troubles in Northern Ireland right throughout that. Didn't affect me too much in Dublin. We had a few incidents, but not overall, nothing near what it was like cross-border. But you had a hard border, you had a military border and everything like that.
Everything was it quite regimented? And
well, my parents were in the military as well too.
Okay.
My father was in the army, and my mum was very much a military wife. So everything was precision. I knew the phonetic alphabet and the 24-hour clock probably as soon as I could talk, literally.
I still don't know it.
Yeah, I used to, when I was going to primary school, I had the phonetic alphabet and I had the 24-hour clock already. And then everything was very ingrained. Tea was at 6 o'clock. It was at the table. The TV was switched off and stuff like that. And
very traditional.
Oh, yeah, very much so. But very disciplined as well, too. And you did not dare step out of line.
So sport was your saviour to...
Well, I'll get onto that now in a second, actually. But it was really when I went to secondary school now that things kind of changed for me and my relationship with my parents as well too, because they sent me to boarding school. They thought that was the best for me.
You obviously had no decision on that.
No, I didn't. No, I was just told you're going and that's it. And that was very, very, very difficult. I found that incredibly hard.
And what age was that?
I was 11.
11.
That was incredibly hard to
away from your friends, away from your family.
Away from everything and everyone, and also as well too. I was very small at that time. I was a late grower, and because I wasn't happy and comfortable in that environment, I was very shy. I was very quiet, and put all those together, and I got picked on and bullied a lot right throughout school.
And that was even in boarding school?
Yeah. Oh God, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. Now, it really was bad.
Was the boarding school run by...
No, it wasn't run by...
church?
No, it wasn't run by the church, no. One thing it actually was a co-educational boarding school, which in Ireland at that time was actually very, very rare.
Oh, was Yeah,
it was very, very rare.
And how long were you in the school, in boarding school? 5 years?
No, 7.
7?
Yeah.
So all the way up to 18? Wow.
All the way through there. So because I was having such difficulties and things like that, and also things like mental health were never... Mental health was just get on with it. And what's your problem? Just get on with it. That's what mental health was.
It didn't exist in some...
No provision for it whatsoever. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not too sure. Because there were times where, I really just felt that the best place for me was away from here in a kind of a harrowing way.
Okay.
But because nobody knew anything about mental health or anything like that, it probably was ignorance. Probably was maybe slightly bliss. But to get back to sports, that is where I found my escape, because my PE teacher was actually part of the Irish athletics team.
And this was all at boarding school? No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He was actually the javelin coach for the Irish track and field team. So out of sympathy, he took me to some of the sessions and things like that, and I got involved with that. I got involved in running because we lived near, the school was not far from a big pine forest. He got me involved in this new sport from Scandinavia, which was called orienteering, which it was back then.
Yeah.
And that to me was an escape, because I was out of school, I was out of the environment, I was away, I was on my own, nobody could bully me, nobody could harm me.
And you kind of shone in your own way.
And
through sport.
And I grasped that big time, and I spent as much time as I could doing sport outside of school.
How big was sport back in
It was big. It was actually quite well. There was a change of headmasters when I was in the equivalent of first year in secondary school.
Okay.
And we were actually lucky to get a headmaster who was he was an Irish hockey coach, and his wife was an ex-Irish hockey international, and they valued sport as much as academic, because they believe that through sport you can achieve academically as well too. And that sport was such a big part of the school life. And I was lucky as well too, in that it was a private school as well, and so therefore the sports facilities were actually really good. But these two transformed everything, and we got state-of-the-art facilities at that time in Ireland. Especially indoor facilities. We had a brand new sports centre built in 1980, which was completely new, and things like that. To have like indoor nets for cricket and badminton courts, basketball courts.
Did you pursue sport?
I did actually.
Try and go further with it?
What happened was after the initial sort of exposure to sport, then my history teacher was an Irish cricket international, and again he kind of took me under his wing as well too. And during the summer term, we had a choice of cricket, tennis or athletics, and I was just completely barged out of tennis or athletics and told to basically go and F off and do like Ponces do and play cricket. And it was really bad, it was just, looking back then now, it's just unbelievable. But anyway, I went along and he said, right, we want somebody to bowl. And what you do is you keep your arm straight. But I went through it there. So I said, right, like this. And he goes, do it again, do it again, do it again. And he was like, right, you're in the under 12 side to play next week. And again, that's where I found.
So you actually found out that you were pretty good at cricket.
Yeah, and I went right through the school system. I played for Leinster Schools, which is my province. I was on the senior team when I was 15. But also the other big thing he did was he brought me up to his own cricket club up in the Phoenix Park in Dublin, which was a very successful club at that time as well. So I played club cricket from 15.
Wow.
And that again probably transformed me as well too, because
and that's where you put a lot of your energy, your time.
But also as well too, it was just a much more welcoming. It was an adult environment, and it was just so much more welcoming. And given the repressive environment that I had at school, it was the breath of fresh air I needed. And to be honest, it probably is one of the reasons. Being brutally honest, probably one of the reasons. Probably saved my life. Because I didn't realize I was spiraling into such depression and negativity from just constantly being just battered and bruised through verbally and just mental harassment.
But did you bring that to your parents' attention? Did you bring that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, many times. Yeah. And I was just told, you've got to stand up for yourself. Just get on with it.
And that was just the way it was then?
Yeah. It was a bit like. I think it was in one of the very first Back to the Future films. I was like a little bit like George McFly.
Okay, I actually haven't seen the film. No.
everybody like putting the post-its on the back on your back and all that. It's just I look back at that, it's just like terrible. I tried to be not quite the nice guy as such, but I just didn't know what to do. And
what would you say to your younger, if watching back or looking back, what would you say to your younger self now, having gone through that?
I suppose in a way it obviously built mental toughness of some degree, because obviously
maybe a bit more resilient.
I wouldn't be here now if that was the case. I've had other issues which I'll come on to later on as we go through kind of later in life as well too. But I suppose it just resilience and things like that. But I knew I had the avenue of sport. And that's what you
looked at the positives.
Yeah. And then as the sport became more serious, as I started playing club cricket, and then I played on the seconds when I was 15. Then played a friendly game for the seniors. Like I'm playing adult grade cricket at 15.
At 15.
Which was, and I'm in a dressing room full of adults here, and it's like I'm looking around thinking, what on earth is? But I got treated exactly like an adult as well.
And in relation to like how big cricket was as a sport then, to like what was it like in comparison to like maybe football at the time?
It's very much a minority sport.
Okay.
Back in Ireland then, like really in Ireland the big sports were rugby, Gaelic games. That's like Gaelic football and hurling, rugby and football. Yeah, cricket was very much a minority sport. It's a lot bigger now, because obviously the exposure that the Irish team had in terms of like the Cricket World Cup in the early noughties and things like that, and also it's now a professional game in Ireland now. So because they're now a test match, they're now a test country, and things like that. But it was very much a kind of a leftover from the colonial days. And that sort of thing. We had a few ex-majors and things like that at the club and stuff like that. Because our club is actually one of the oldest. It's actually the oldest in the country. It was founded in 1830.
Okay, so it's a pretty big deal at that age.
It was competitive within the Leinster circuit. It was a very competitive grade, but we just didn't. You only get to like a kind of a certain level,
and then
it was only when you played teams from Northern Ireland that it became more competitive, because they had a probably higher standard, and also cricket as well too. It's an all-Ireland sport like rugby. So of course, once I started playing senior level when I was 17, 18, it involved playing in Northern Ireland during the 80s, during the Troubles. And of course you had all the associated security issues.
And how was that? What did that have an impact on you?
Not me personally, no, because you just got used to the procedures. You got used to the fact the club would check with British Army headquarters up in Lisburn. The Army intelligence were in Lisburn. All the Dublin clubs would check with them on a Friday to make sure that it's okay to play at the weekend. The odd game was postponed for intelligence reasons. But the actual going through all the security and things like that, it just became second nature, really, and that sort of stuff. There were a few incidents nearby. You got used to the security. We used to get an RUC escort some areas of Belfast, because we were going through like the Shankill or the Falls, things like that.
And these were areas that you shouldn't go.
These were areas that it's okay if you go, depending which foot you kick with. If you kick with the left foot, you don't go there. If you kick with the right foot, you don't go there, and things like that. Belfast was very much a place where you had to be really, really streetwise. There were places you could go, and there were places you definitely could not go. And as long as you adhered to that, it wasn't too bad. But I got used to it. And things like that. We had a couple of near misses where places that we were staying in, like Ballykelly, for example. We stayed in Ballykelly only about a week or so before the Dropping Well pub was bombed, which was literally across the road from where we stayed.
Wow.
And things like that. So
did that make you think like, shit?
A little bit, not too much, but I think my dad was all right with it. I know my mum wasn't happy at all. My mum definitely wasn't happy with me travelling to Northern Ireland during those times. But she kept stum. Because she knew the value of it for me as well too. So and thank God we had no incidents during that time. But there was actually a very interesting documentary by Brian O'Driscoll about the rugby and about the cross-border participation rugby, and that was very, very relevant to me during that time, because we had the exact same situation with cricket. In the Irish team, you had people who were actually from another country. playing for Ireland, because it was an all-Ireland sport.
And that caused a lot of controversy, a lot of uproar.
No, it didn't cause not within the team, no, because I played alongside guys from the north and stuff like that, and shared a dressing room with them and things like that. And there was never any talk about the troubles or anything like that. It was always something that was very much on the sidelines. For us playing, it was just a case. We are like the rugby guys. We are one team. And the rugby guys wear the green jersey. Whether or not they sing the national anthem is another thing. But politics was never brought into it at all.
It was more from the outside.
Very much from the outside. When we're playing up there, we would get some comments from the sidelines and things like that that were not always great. As well too.
Just kind of went over your head.
Sometimes there might be a little bit of sledging out as they call it, out in the middle as well too. But personally, I took sledging as a compliment, because if they're sledging me, I'm obviously doing something right, because I'm getting into their heads.
Yes, some people would use that as a motivation.
I don't use it as a like, oh my God, they've said terrible things about me and things like that. I'm thinking to myself, right, they're obviously not concentrating on what they're doing. I'm obviously doing something right. I've got into their heads and take it from there.
Wow.
So, but that was that.
So finished with the boarding school at 18.
Yes, that's correct.
Did you carry on sport through?
I did, yeah. I carried on for another 2 years. Like I played under 19s for Leinster. Again, my province played at under 19 level. We won the All Ireland under 19 championships twice.
Wow.
As well too, which was great. So
great achievements, yeah.
I actually played like 1 year more than most people would, because I was very much underage. I was only 17 when I played first. Most people play 1 year at 18 and that's it. But I was lucky enough to get 2 goes at that.
Must have been an amazing experience.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it was
great. Oh, it was great, because everything was sponsored by ESSO, the tournament. So you had all expenses paid. You stayed in lovely hotels and stuff like that. And
I guess what being in boarding school, you probably never got really exposed to, apart from the cricket when you were playing. You never maybe had seen different parts of traveling and different hotels and that kind of luxurious kind of style, let's say.
Yeah, and also as well too, to be praised as well too. I know it sounds sort of kind of trivial as well too, but everything was like, you could always do better, and that sort of thing. There is yes.
Whilst at the same time you're doing very, very well. But you could always do. Yeah.
But actually, for somebody to come around, put the arm around the shoulder and say, "Listen, you did a really good job. You played really well," or even be able to have the honour, lead the team off the pitch and things like that. It was like I was just shell shocked, and people coming up to me and saying, "Well done," and actually getting positive recognition and positive attention, because I was only used to negative attention at that stage. So it was a big transformation mentally, and I really, really grasped it. Like I was up at that club literally all the time. I couldn't get enough of it.
Earlier you said that the relationship with your parents broke down, but I'm sure they, at the time, moving up the ranks through cricket, they've been very proud of the achievements that you have made.
Yeah. It was mentioned the odd time and things like that, but I knew they were always very supportive. I never felt that they were never unsupportive or telling me you can't do this, you can't do that, things like that. But they generally let me get on with it a lot of times. They came up and watched the odd game and things like that, but they very much saw it as my domain, and they'll just keep away, and that's it. And maybe it wasn't a bad thing as well too, because it gave me my sort of personal space as well too. So we kind of weren't in each other's hair, so to speak, which is kind of something that happened, I think, a little bit a year or two later, when I was like 19, 20, when it came around the time to actually now start looking for a job. I've left school. I've done a repeat year, so I can't really keep repeating my sixth form all the time. You can only get away with it. You can only play that card. You can only play that card once or twice, and get away with it without people seeing through it.
So career-wise, what did you know coming out of school what you wanted to like? Did you know?
No. I know my father wanted me to go to Trinity College, which is kind of like the Oxford of Dublin, and I don't think he was overly impressed when I said no way. I'm not interested, because I knew people who went to university and spent 3-4 years at university and were still unemployed. And I just didn't quite see the logic of doing that.
So that theme hasn't really changed, because that still obviously happens now. Like people do still So that was been around for a long time.
I would have been interested in university for the sport and social life. Yeah, definitely. I know a couple of people who went there just for that.
So that's quite big. Yeah.
Yeah. Like student life was very much like we used to play Trinity College in the leagues anyway in the cricket. So I knew the place. The facilities were fabulous. It's a very, very historic place. It's right in the city centre of Dublin. It's literally only down the road from where I grew up. And things like that. So I had a good idea of student life. It was attractive, I must admit.
It chose the work.
But at the end of the day, it didn't put brass in pocket.
Yeah, and so opted for the working route.
Basically. But back then, we're talking about 84 now, and Ireland was in a dreadful state economically at that time. So there was hardly any jobs. There was mass emigration of people of 18 to the 18-30 age group. The emigration levels were huge because there was people just saw no future. I didn't actually realise what was actually going to. If somebody told me 2 years later you'd be living in London, I would have laughed them out of the room at that time. Oh yeah, definitely.
So you saw your future in Ireland?
I did at that time. I thought, right, I'll try and just do whatever I can. I worked in local bars. I did floor service in local pubs and things like that. I basically did anything. I was kind of jack of all, really. God knows how many jobs, nixers as we used to call them back then. Somebody would look for a painter. Can you paint? Whatever. It's a day's work.
You just find out as you went along.
Yeah, it's a day's work. Yeah, like if I was to tell you the amount of jobs I went through at that stage, it would sound like I was probably had more jobs than Frank Spencer at that stage. But it was just something to keep money, because I always felt that I had to do something. I couldn't stay at home because it would just explode between my parents and myself. And I always felt, not that they were overbearing on me, but I just didn't want to. I felt I was letting them down.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet, and I wanted to earn my own money and have a proper job and everything like that. Even though the support was always there in terms of, I was never going to be kicked out of the house. But it always became that conversation, that awkward moment at tea when it's like, have you looked for any jobs recently? And I'm like, yeah, but I'd said, and that sort of thing. And then it's, it just gets to you.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff.
So you moved over to London.
Yes.
And then, so now you're IT?
Yes.
Microsoft infrastructure engineer?
Yep.
How did that come about? What?
Right. Okay. Well, the seeds were planted actually in Ireland in my last year in Ireland in late 84 through 85. I actually got a work experience program, which is like the equivalent of the old YTS here.
Okay.
Where I was placed in work for 6 months, and the company would get paid to take me on. And it was ICL computers, which are like, I don't know, they're probably well defunct now, but they were a British computer firm at that time. So that was my first exposure into IT. And then it just happened.
And obviously the technology was nowhere near to where it is now.
You're talking of like
computers,
machines the size of wardrobes that are now probably only half as powerful as what you have on your mobile phone.
Yeah,
and then things.
Well,
like
they're probably mobile phones probably more powerful now. Right?
Oh, definitely, probably 2-3 times the power of it. But the thing was, it was a foot in the door, and it was a little sense of pride as well too. That I'm now doing this now, and it was like that first sort of step into, like, I'm an adult now, and I'm now doing my own things. I'm getting my own money, so suddenly those beers on a Friday tasted a bit better when they're out of your own pocket, and you can buy your mates around as well too, rather than going through the old, I'm still unemployed. And that was a big stigma for me. All my mates were great; they were fabulous about it all. They always looked after me, never left me out of anything. But I just felt embarrassed all the time about not being able to pay my way and things like that, and all those sort of things stuck. But anyway, that ICL was kind of the key in the door, but that was only going to last for 6 months, and then I was back to square one. But it just happened.
Was there not an opportunity then to stay on?
No, there wasn't. No, there wasn't, unfortunately, because they were cutting back all the time, and in fact, I think a couple of years later they moved out of Ireland completely. But by chance, I was over. My cousin moved to London in 85. He worked in the Cavendish Hotel, and it was his 21st, and this was a game changer for me. And my parents said, look, we'll pay for you to go over to London for that. And I thought, wow. And that was the first time I'd seen London. And I have to say, when I saw it, I thought, wow, this is a place. This is a place for me.
And was that late?
That was September.
80?
That was September '85. And
yeah.
I remember I got a copy of the Evening Standard. I saw all the jobs there. I thought, oh my God, and then that's it. I just thought to myself,
you knew then that you wanted.
I knew then this is a place for me. Didn't quite expect it to turn out as quickly as it did or how it did, but I knew that. I think the following year, I thought I've got to pursue this.
That would have been quite a big deal for you. Obviously, being at boarding school for 7 years, the relationship with your parents, and like leaving all of that to go and pursue a career. Or not knowing,
and leaving the country and everything like that as well too. But yet, funnily enough, like I look back on it now, I wouldn't do it now in a million years.
Really?
No, if you asked me to move to another country now, I'd be like, get out of it. Yeah. But back then, you're a bit more fearless as well too. Plus, I didn't really have now I've got family and stuff like that. So you got obviously a lot more responsibilities. Yeah. I only had myself, and that was it. But what happened was, it was just a chance meeting. My father met a friend of his who knew somebody in House of Fraser, which and Army and Navy were redoing their IT in Victoria, and they were looking for 2 or 3 people. And I was told to contact this person here. I phoned him. He was quite surprised to hear I was in Ireland, and even more surprised when I told him I'll be there tomorrow for an interview, and arrived there.
Did you?
As well too, yeah. I took the boat overnight.
Wow.
That evening, I called my brother-in-law. My parents were away on holidays, and they just knew nothing about this at all. It wasn't done deliberately. It was just the way it was.
Yeah. It was spontaneous.
Things just happened so quickly. And anyway, my brother-in-law dropped us down to the ferry at Dublin Port. I got the ferry to Liverpool, got the train from Liverpool down to London. Got my interview at 1:00 and went through everything there. Was offered the job
and then, yeah.
Yeah, wow. I think he still thought that am I going to turn up next Monday, and I did, and never looked back. Really, that was it. That was January of '86. So in that 1 week, my parents come back from holidays, and I told them I've got a job and all that.
But it's
thing.
in London.
But I said, when my parents said oh well, is it low? Whereabouts in Dublin? And I went it's not Dublin, it's not Ireland, and there was a bit of a gasp.
How did that go down? Were they okay with it?
Yeah, they were fine with it. Yeah, they're fine with it. Like my mum was obviously, there were cheers at Dunleary when because this was like pre-Ryanair, so you couldn't afford to fly and things like that. So you got the boat and the train, and there were some cheers, and obviously I realised, I think it was the night before, the magnitude of all this when suddenly it was announced that I was out at there was a rugby international that weekend, and we went to a rugby club afterwards for a night. And then it was announced that, everybody now, we wish Theo all the best in his new future in London. And I think that's the first time that it really, really hit me. Like, my God, I am going. There's no way back now. Yeah. I can't turn around and say, actually, nah.
And you were 18? Were you 18 at the time?
I was 20.
20?
I was 20 at that time. So
very big deal.
Yeah. And, the first couple of weeks over here were
and where did you settle when you came over here? Where?
Like most Irish county Kilburn.
It was in Kilburn.
Yep. I found my way. I was told about an Irish Centre hostel in Kilburn up Quex Road. It was not far from Abbey Road actually. And I was there for 4 weeks, but I had my own room. It was £40 a week, all in.
Because there was a lot of Irish would go over, and Kilburn was a very Irish.
Massive community. Massive, yeah. And obviously, it was again a little bit like kind of going to boarding school again, because it's a whole new environment. But it was a lot more positive. Yeah. And things like that. But again, after those 4 weeks, then the game changer was getting. There was some Australian. There was 2 Aussies and 2 Kiwi guys that I worked with, and they were looking for a roommate in a house. So I went along with them, and then that was great. They were fabulous. They looked after us so well, and that's kind of just built up bit by bit. Then I got another house. Then after that, and you get more settled, and things like that. You get more on your feet. Then I'm starting to go out. I'm now then going on. I can afford to go on lads' holidays and things like that, which I could never do before.
And what was it like for the gym environment? Was that something that was still quite big? Were you still passionate about that? Or were you just? I was. Yeah. It was 87
when I moved to Slough, and I didn't realise my landlord was very big into squash, massive, big squash player. But he went to a gym in Colnbrook, not far from Slough, and just the subject of sport came up, and we had a big. And he was like, "Oh wow, yeah, you know about this and this." So I told him I was looking for a gym, and he was like, "Oh mate, come along with me," and that was it. And he brought me along and introduced me to people, and that was it. We struck a deal. I was doing shift work at the time, so I could get an off-peak membership, which was perfect because I had days off during the week and stuff like that. I was doing. It was 24/7 sites, so we were working. We were doing 4 on 4 off. It was like 4 days, 4 days off, 4 nights, 4 days off.
Yeah.
So I could go along during the daytimes off peak, which was perfect. And then that was the first time I really was in the gym environment. And it was absolutely fantastic because, again,
because you hadn't played sport for a little while, really.
No, I hadn't. No. I played the odd match. Now I played back in Ireland where we'd make an arrangement for sort of travel.
Socially or
no. I played a couple of competitive.
Yeah.
I think there was 2 competitive games where they actually paid for me to. They actually paid my flight over.
Wow.
As well too. There was 2 cup matches, 2 cup semi-finals that we got into. That the I believe people. I don't know whether it was a team or the club, but anyway, I got a phone call on a Thursday to say, "Can you play at the weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Sure.
And I was told, "Right, you go to Heathrow Airport on Friday afternoon," and given a kind of a code word, so to say the ticket desk. And I went along there to the Aer Lingus ticket desk. So they produced a ticket, and that was it. And I found out that the club had paid for me to what they call the executive jet.
Wow.
So that was quite a wow.
Yeah.
Sort of factor with that.
Amazing.
But then after that, then I played just a couple of social games when I was over in Ireland or so, they maybe a Taverners game or things like that. But then the cricket gradually faded more and more out because I got involved with shift work and therefore couldn't really give the time to play the standard that I wanted to.
Yeah.
I did play briefly for Finchley for a couple of months as well too, on recommendations of a couple of guys at the club who knew people up there. But again, to play at the level that, not being arrogant, but to play at the level that I wanted to play at, demanded 3 days a week, probably 3 days a week nets, and being available at the weekends. And I couldn't be available at the weekends. Doing 4 on 4 off, I was only available probably 2 weekends out of 5 and things like that. So, and it's never going to be a professional gig like cricket is now. So what's the professional gig? Well, the professional gig is my job.
Did you find that you missed home? Were you going back?
I went back and forth quite a bit, I'd say, in the first kind of 6-8 months. Yeah, I think after that, when I moved to Slough in '85, I think that was the first time I really sort of started to sort of be more on my own 2 feet. Yeah, there was a bit there, but I always saw a positivity about London because
the opportunities,
and also a complete fresh start as well too. And I think it probably did my relationship with my parents a lot of good as well too, and things like that.
Having that gap.
Yeah, and also I became domesticated for the first time in my life. I used to put my clothes on the bedroom floor and wonder how come they came back on the hangers all ironed. I had to learn how to iron clothes. It was like, oh my God. Cooking wasn't a problem because I fended for myself quite a bit anyway in the latter years in Ireland because of the cricket and my parents going away quite a bit at the weekends, and I'd stay at home because of matches. So it wasn't too bad there. But the laundry issues, the laundry bags used to come back.
Did you bring it back with
Can't believe I'm saying this. The laundry bags used to come back with me in the first sort of couple of months of living in London. People looking at Dublin Airport going, "Oh, bless," or Holyhead or whatever, going like, "Oh, bless him. He's only just moved there. Oh, bless him. He's come back with all his clean clothes now."
Yeah, they see you coming a mile off knowing you're going back home.
Yeah. But also as well, the environment I worked in Army and Navy as well too was very good as well because I worked in the central buying office, so I was with like young people as well too, and young people have very different backgrounds to myself as well too, and they really took me on, and a lot of people took me under their wing, so that helped me settle down and also build up self-belief, self-confidence and things like that. Yeah, that was
because obviously with regards to like boarding school and the issues that you had at school, has that had an impact going into like your 30s, your 40s and stuff? Had it affected you in more ways than you thought?
Yes, probably, and I really only discovered that recently as well too, because sadly, of course, as you get older, your parents get older and things like that. Since 2005, it's been really, really tough I lost my father in 2005 suddenly, which was very hard to deal with. I didn't realize my mother was as ill as she was. My sister had multiple sclerosis from the late 80s, and she was almost in a terminal state as well too. And in 1996, my older brother was killed in a car crash when he was only 39 at the time.
Wow.
And that sort of thing, so.
That's a lot to deal.
My brother's death was tough because that's only, the guy's only 39 and he's here today, gone tomorrow.
And did you have a lot of time with him, like boarding school and stuff? Were you still
kind of like he followed my father into the army and was very much an army guy and would have been, and I think, to be honest, could well have been right up in the top brass had he been able to carry on his career, because he was very much a soldier. He was already an officer commanding of a barracks at that age, which was very rare too, and he was thought of very, very highly by not only the top brass but also the people who worked under him as well too, because he was firm but fair.
Yeah. And the relationship with your sister?
Probably a lot more. Like, my brother was very much an army type relationship, but you knew if you were in trouble, he'd back you. He'd back you 100%. And that sort of thing, and he would fight for you 100%, but he'd expect you to stand on your own 2 feet as well too.
Yeah.
My sister was obviously more a sort of brother sister. So it was hard to see her.
A lot happened in that space.
Hard to see her kind of dwindle away, because MS is an awful thing. I did my bit when I ran the Dublin Marathon in 2003 and donated all the funds to the MS amazing. Society of Ireland, which was incredible. I didn't realise how emotional it was going to be until the day of the presentation, when we had an evening where everybody presented their checks, and I suddenly realised then, and I was just a bawling wreck.
Was it a full marathon?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
that's such an achievement. That's a massive achievement.
Yeah, it was something that when I worked at BNP Paribas from 99 to about 04, there were a couple of guys there that were into running, and I just caught the bug. And I just thought, I always wanted to do something like a marathon, because I thought it was so cool.
And I guess that gave you a little bit more motivation as to why you wanted to do it as well, and raise that money.
Yeah, and then just that stigma of actually going out and running. It's like, no, I don't really want to do this and that sort of thing. I'd rather be indoors and stuff like that. But then I got more confident, and obviously, my fitness, because I was 38, 39 or so at that stage. And I was quite aghast as how, from literally coughing and spluttering after 100 yards on day one to a couple of weeks later being able to do 2-3 miles, and that's and it just built up of that.
Yeah.
And it also as well too is a nice escape as well too from work, because again I'm in an investment bank. It's quite a high pressure environment as well too there, and it was a nice escape, and a great sense of achievement as well too, to think that. And then
I bet.
It became addictive. It really became addictive, because suddenly when I ran 10 miles, I wanted to run a half marathon. I did my first half marathon, then I wanted to do the full. So me and a couple of other guys, we planned it out. We put a plan in place over a year that we're going to do 10Ks here, then we're going to try and do a half marathon here.
And you spread it out over those 12 months?
Yeah, and then obviously I chose Dublin because I knew that A, I'm familiar with the city, B, the start and finish is literally within walking distance of my parents' house as well too. And I knew hospitality would be no problem as well too. So they all stayed at my parents' place, and they had a program in Ireland to gearing up for that, a training program of 10Ks and half marathons to lead you up through that. So we all did the half marathon in September, and then the full marathon at the end of October.
Wow, and for such a good cause as well.
Yeah, and then we did the same again in Amsterdam the following year.
Really?
Yeah, because it's nice and flat, so we knew it was a safe bet.
Wow, that's amazing. So those years seem to be quite challenging from all that trauma, let's say.
Yeah,
there was a lot of positives in that, with the things that you achieved, but obviously a lot of negatives too. How have you dealt, or how did you deal with those at the time?
Again, probably sport.
Sport, yeah.
Yeah, I think probably sport really, and
that's why it's been your like you said earlier. Sport has been your saving.
Yeah. Because I got married in 91. As well too. So obviously when my brother was killed in 96, I had a wife at that stage. And actually, not long after his funeral was when she realised that, right, child is on the way, sort of thing, which is kind of like spooky given the nature of what happened there. But, she was very supportive as well too. But now suddenly there's somebody else that I'm kind of feel responsible for as well too at that stage as well. And then, Stephen was born in 97. And now I'm a father. And I've got a child too, and that's sort of wow.
Yeah, along with all the stuff that had happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he was only 8 years. He was 8 years of age when my dad fell ill very quickly, and having to deal with all that with him at that stage. So it meant I gave up my job for just over a year to be able to look after, because now there's a house in Dublin and I've got to look after. My mum's in no state to look after herself. If I didn't do what I did, she would have been probably dead within 2-3 months. And could I live with that? No. I had to do something.
A conscious decision.
So I made the decision to take a sabbatical. I moved back to Ireland to look after my mum, get her care sorted out, and look after I had to do all the estate because my brother was gone. My sister was in a hospice. So there was only me. All this fell on my shoulders.
A lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
Yeah, all this fell on my shoulders in the space of probably a couple of days, literally.
Wow.
And things like that. So I just haven't, looking back on it now, I don't know. I don't know how I dealt with it, but
you can't. You just do.
You
deal with it.
It's like what is the next step to keep me going? You don't look at where you are next week or anything like that. You look at what's the next thing I need to do to keep going.
Is that what kept you going? Just the next thing? What
there was an element of that as well too, but also as well because that was probably my first experience of what I describe as real like depression. Because I never got a chance to grieve after my father. And suddenly now I'm in the house that I grew up in. There's nobody there. There's a deafening silence. And it's just so...
And the trauma from school.
And the trauma as well too. And that's, I think, where everything came together. And unfortunately, like many other people, then suddenly guys like Ron Bacardi and Jack Daniels and other mates like that suddenly start knocking on your door. And I embraced those as well, because it was the only thing to kind of numb the pain. And I went through a bad time there. My weight ballooned to, crikey, I was over 17 stone back then, and it was just ridiculous. But that's the first time I really experienced like real dependency on that, and also depression as well too. But thankfully, support I got from neighbours of ours in Dublin.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you feel there was a way out? Did you?
At times I didn't, but thank God I had people close who realised what was going on, and they were really good without actually patronising me and things like that. Just involving me in day-to-day life. Come around and have tea with us and stuff like that. And that gave me like just the warmth of friendliness, just genuine friendliness. Help me, and let's have a chat about this or anything like that.
And not necessarily a sense of purpose, but like just the fact that there was someone else there for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that helped enormously because I'm on my own. I am technically in another country, even though I am back in Ireland, but I am in another country. I'm away from my family.
It was a big change.
Like my son didn't know what was going on either. All he knew was that his dad just disappeared, and he comes back every now and again, and that's it. Now I see him, now I don't. So of course, obviously, that kind of affected him as well too. Yeah, he's 23 now, and we talk about this quite regularly, and it's quite interesting to see his kind of take on all that at that time.
But I think the main thing is it's good that you talk about it.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Because also he's on the autistic spectrum as well too. He's kind of marginal in terms of he was always on the borderline between a statement of special needs and that sort of stuff, which presented its own challenges as well to him, and also to us as well too, growing up, or at least raising a child through that time. Like the early teenage years for him were just horrendous for us. Yeah. Because it's the awkwardness of that mixed up teenage years that we all go through, plus the bit of autism as well too, with the very much black and white thinking. And no grey areas, and not understanding emotions, not understanding the consequence of things he says.
Yeah, and I think even as a child, like even if I go back to experiences, like I also forget that like my parents were also having their own issues within them. Like there's things that they would have suffered from in their childhood that might not have Oh yeah, they'd been suffering. We kind of look at it as they're just our parents, and that's it. But there's more to it.
I had the same with my parents as well too. Like back at the time when I was like 16, 17 as well too. My dad was going through a tough time in the army because unfortunately he spoke his mind probably a few times more often than he should have, and rubbed the top brass up the wrong way. And in the end, he was posted like outside of Dublin, way over, as a kind of a shot across the bows to toe the line, and he refused to. And then it started to get messy, and it was only later on that he sort of confided to us how difficult it actually was. And I didn't, I had no idea about this because I was in my own kind of bubble.
We've all got our own, and I guess like you think because they're your parents, they're supposed to be okay.
Yeah.
You don't really ask. They don't really. Maybe that's why I said earlier. I think it's good that you speak about it with your son because not many people do.
And my son kind of went through the same thing when he was like 15, 16 as well too. He had no idea really what I was doing or all the sort of things behind the scenes that both we were doing because at that stage as well too, sadly, me and my wife started not to get on that great, and those first cracks probably started to appear around that time through, I think, just really wear and tear from everything. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm doing shift work still as well too, so there are times where I'm on nights, so therefore I'm not there overnight. I'm coming back, sleeping, getting up, going to work at 5 o'clock or so in the evening and things like that for 4 or 5 days in a row.
And that just takes its toll on everything.
Yeah. And to be honest, I wasn't really 100% sure actually how it was affecting everybody else as well too, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to work. I'm earning the money to pay the bills and put food on the table, etc., etc. And you kind of get into your own little bubble as well too, and kind of one thing led to another, and now unfortunately we're in a situation where she's now moved back to America and has lived there for just over a year now,
and that would have had its toll on you too, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. It's the last couple of years have been really difficult. Before you even bring COVID into the equation, and this is where a facility like CrossFit has been such a lifeline to me, because it has the new form of training, which is great, but it also has the slight social element to it as well.
I guess aside, a lot of people might not necessarily not need, but they don't see, they not aware of that there is that.
It's very much the community. Like you talk about CrossFit community, and I get that big time because the CrossFit community has been very, very good to me. Even if it's just like a quick hi, or a quick just smile, just to be in the company of other people as well too, and especially now with all the restrictions that we've had to endure over the last 2 years as well.
Yeah, it's definitely taken its toll, and I guess with someone in the circumstances you've been through, it would have really got to you mentally.
Yeah. Like I had to take time off work a couple of years ago when it really started to get bad, domestically at home, and that was the first time I experienced like CBT therapy, and through that a lot of things became very, very apparent of how.
But it's made you grow as a person.
Yeah. Well, certainly I understood where a lot of things go back to, and things like that, how childhood experiences affect you and shape your behaviour as well too.
Massive believer of that.
Because I did actually, I hate to say, but I actually did make plans to end it all. I had enough. I just felt it was.
And that's how deep it was.
That's how deep it got. Yeah, I felt it was the best thing for me. It was the best. More importantly, I felt it was the best thing for my family, that I wouldn't be in their hair anymore. Nobody could bother me. I'd be quite happy. And I remember I sat in a park in Collindale for about nearly 2 hours, in another world, completely. And it was a very, very strange place.
And there was no support for you?
To be. Well, there was support, but it was up to me to reach out and that sort of thing. But again, I felt I had to deal with it myself, etc., etc. But I got to such a stage of desperation that I just saw this as the only option, and I was actually quite happy with it. I was pleased, I was peaceful, I had no regrets. I thought, that's it. I've done my bit now, and I'm quite happy now. And I think what stopped me was the feeling that I'd have to go through so much pain by either throwing myself on the tracks or whatever like that, because what I was thinking of doing.
Yeah.
Which is, look back to now, it's just quite scary.
A very dark place.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. And it's hard to kind of describe it, but it's something more than just like, I'm not feeling great today. It's something way deeper than that.
A series of events.
Yeah, I actually, as I sat in that park, I felt invisible to other people. I really felt invisible. I was up in the clouds. Really, I was that time. I was almost, as the song goes, knocking on heaven's door. But thankfully, there was either no answer or I was told, sorry, no, come back again another day. But the after effects of that were that I finally realised I have to admit I have a problem here and I have to seek help. I can't.
And that's one of the hardest things.
It is.
Right?
It is. Yep. That's exactly it. That's just what I was going to come to. That was a monumental step. I remember going into the GPs, and he was like, "Mr. Cronhelm." I go, "Yes," and he goes, "How can I help you?" And I literally just couldn't say a word. My mouth was dry. I was shaking like a leaf, and I just couldn't get the words out that. I have made plans to end my life. I feel, just that feeling of like I had to admit that I just couldn't cope anymore. I felt not say that I'm useless, but I need help here and things like that. Just to a complete and utter stranger.
It's one of the hardest things,
It was, yeah.
To get that out and
yeah, and that I have like a mental, it goes back to again college days where you're told like, oh, for God's sake, just get on with it, and that type of, because that's
obviously now without realizing the support's there, but you hadn't known how to get that out to deliver that to but you did and
I couldn't, I think I got about one or two words out and then I just completely broke down. But that was the best thing I ever did, and I walked out of that place probably, I think I only should have been there about 15 minutes, I think was it, but luckily it was the last appointment of the day. And he stayed with me for nearly half an hour and he signed me off work for a month and things like that. But also where I work now, like I work at TfL now, and TfL still have a very, very strong occupational health because of tube drivers and the traumas that they potentially can go through. So mental health is very, very, it's taken very, very seriously there. So I was very, very fortunate that I was able to go into the hands of occupational health with TfL.
And that's something that you've been working with?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. And they were tremendous. But I needed that time away. But I also realised that's when things were breaking up domestically is probably what pushed me into that point.
But it's allowed you to have that growth to, identify a few things for yourself and put you in although through the hardest times of your life, but also bounce back into better positions. Yep.
And believe it or not, all throughout that, I still managed to be able to go to the gym probably once or twice a week, regardless of all that as well too going on.
Because that was your downtime, that was your own time?
Yeah, it was, yeah, definitely, yeah. And last year I had to, with the breakup of my marriage last year, unfortunately Ron Bacardi and a few other mates came back again. But again, because of the support I have at work, I realised, wow, this is getting a bit serious. So I was able to reach out unashamedly, and I spent about 6 weeks in with the alcohol team. But again, that was a great thing as well too.
And the support network being so important to you.
Yeah.
And originally, it's funny because originally at the really beginning, you didn't have much of a support network. But now as things have gone on, that support
and it's also removing that stigma, my own personal removal of that stigma, to say, look, hey, I have a problem here. But it's okay. It's like the saying, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But that was not the way I grew up. It was not okay to be not. It was. Well, let's see. I don't know where it goes, but anyway.
But it was new. It was a new feeling. It was a new thought process. It was a big change.
It was basically just like get on with this, and that's it. Stiff upper lip, and everybody goes through this and that sort of thing. But
but now come out the other end, and we're on the climb. It's positive. It's things are looking a lot better.
Yeah. And again, this venture that I'm on at the moment has played a huge part in all that, as and again going right back to the very beginning of how sport and activity and just endorphins in general are probably what kept me going.
And what's the plans for you and fitness? What does the future look like with that now? Are you enjoying, there's a good balance between your work and training,
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. Like, as I say, I'm not going to be going to the next Olympics or anything like that. But I am finding like I'm doing stuff that I never thought I'd be able to do now. And
which is such an achievement.
And it's quite funny because my son, I think after about 2 months of coming here initially, like my son suddenly started to say like, "Whoa, Dad, you've got legs, you've got shoulders, you've got arms," and it's like, oh, okay. All I do is just come along and do the classes, and that's it. I never really sort of thought into that. So that was even now, that was great to sort of get those.
It's a big boost in confidence too.
And I noticed things like my clothes that I hadn't been able to wear for years suddenly started to fit better, and things like that. So the feel good factor I had there for myself has been huge, and I just want to be able to continue on with that,
having fun with it.
And hopefully no more bloody lockdowns. That'll suddenly break the mold, because I had about 3 months of probably of getting started and getting up to a level, and then of course lockdown. Now we're picking it back up again. Now, okay, I've got a lot of work going on my house at the moment, which will probably take me away for the next couple of weeks. But once that's all done, then it'll be hopefully full steam ahead without any more lockdown issues and things like that to deal with.
Go back to getting those arms, legs, and shoulders back in optimum condition.
Yeah, like I'm never going to be a fan of burpees over bars or anything like that. But then again, who is?
Well, that's true.
And things like that. But what I find is that I'm putting myself into places that I didn't think I would be able to go, and also coaches push me into those areas that I probably would not have gone to myself. But when I go in there and experience it and come out the other side, it's like, wow, that was really good.
It's another tick, another sense of achievement.
Very much the sense. I feel a lot more sense of achievement now coming here, doing what I'm doing here, than when I with all due respect to Virgin, than I was there. Like obviously, the hot tub and the sauna were nice, and the steam room were nice. There you go, hint, hint.
one day, hopefully.
If Lorenzo wins the Euro Millions now and has Lorenzo's CrossFit Palace,
hopefully,
and
we'll
things
see.
like that.
Theo, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you and finding out your story.
My pleasure.
It's been amazing. Guys, tune back next week for another episode.